My special guest today joins us from Staten Island, New York. He's been involved for many years in broadcasting and production, working with many big names in the music industry, as well as presenting his own TV show, New York Rocks TV. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show Mr. Phil Fiumano. How you doing?
Hey, Joe. Long time no hear.
What's
I don't
going
know
on,
if we're
brother?
gonna see you, but it's been a long time. We haven't spoken in a while. Ever since this pandemic, man.
Oh,
Thank you
man,
for
I
bringing
know.
me on your show, and
Thanks for
we have
coming on.
history.
I mean,
You know?
Phil, I first met you at Strawberry Fields, Central Park in New York at the John Lennon 70th birthday memorial. I was with my friend Joe Calhoun from Liverpool. You heard us talk, shoved a microphone in our face and said, "We got two guys here from Liverpool."
Yeah, it was awesome. I was like, wow, I never met anybody from England. Never, let's just say from Liverpool. Actually, that's where the Beatles originated from.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, because it's like, with the microphone and interviewing people, people are so shy and timid. I was like, I got to get interviews with people, and you were the perfect person.
But speaking of John Lennon, you were actually a couple of blocks away from the Dakota the night he was shot.
I was in the city. It was 1980, and I was hanging out in the city with my friend Mike. I wasn't really allowed out to go into the city, so my father took me to the Kiss concert, and then I met my friend Mike there. We seen the concert, but after the years went by, I was allowed to go to the city. I was old enough, to go by myself. And that night, I happened to be hanging out with my friend Mike, and then I was coming back, and I remember it was so cold out. I was like freezing. I was like, oh, I got to get to the train. So I was running to Columbus Circle because it's right around the park where the Dakota is.
Yeah.
And then like the closest train station to get back to the ferry on Staten Island is Columbus Circle. So I remember running past the wall like this. They had that wall with the stones all around Central Park. You've been to Central Park,
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was running past there, and all of a sudden I hear sirens and cop cars, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, something big must have happened, because that's all I kept hearing was sirens and police cars. And I was like, but back in the day, this was before the internet and anything else. You never found out about nothing until maybe the next day. Actually, they broke the news on the Monday Night Football, I think it was.
It was Howie Cosell, I think.
Howard Cosell.
Yeah.
Howard Cosell. Yeah. He was the big, the announcer back in the day, So that's how I found out the next day, I went to sleep, I didn't really put the news on. By that time, it was probably past the news or whatever. But anyhow, I found out, the next day. It was just such a tragic thing to happen, It was like... It was insane, It was, and we lost a musical genius that day.
December the 8th and October 9th in Central Park. It's always packed, isn't it? The people in New York just gather there twice a year. I
used to go there, and everybody goes there, and we gather together and we sing, sing mainly all John Lennon songs.
Yeah.
My friend Larry Russell, he's the man who introduced me to Sid Bernstein. And Sid Bernstein was the man who started like promoting years and years before the Beatles with like Tito Puentes and Julie Garland, who was a manager. And, he was around the whole music scene. The story is very long. I can't get into it too long over here. But anyhow, with Sid Bernstein, he's the one who brought the Beatles to America to play at Carnegie Hall. And he got the call from... Ed Sullivan's crew to ask him, say, hey, Sid, can we put the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan show? Because it was on a Sunday. They taped the Ed Sullivan show. And they were playing during the week for Carnegie Hall. So Sid was like, sure, fine. Because it was good for Sid because like advertising for the show. Because if they would have seen the Beatles on TV on the Ed Sullivan show, then his concerts would have even sold out faster or whatever, it would have sold more tickets or whatever. So it was like a genius thing anyhow. Yeah. And actually that's what happened. So, he got the Beatles on the show and, of course the Beatles played in 64 and I think 65, they played 2 years at Chase Stadium. and that was like the first concerts. They were outside concerts ever,
Yeah.
in a big stadium.
I mean, the footage of that 65 Shea Stadium, the footage of that is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, they played at RFK Stadium, I think, too, the Beatles. I got to get all the dates correct, so I don't want to make mistakes. But anyhow, yeah, and then actually I met Sid Bernstein through Larry Russell, who is like, he's a musician who was in a couple of bands back in the day in the 60s and 70s, but he was also in this band called Beatles Stock, So he introduced me. He says, "Oh, you should interview." I went to go see them one night at BB King's Beatles Stock, and he said, "Oh, I should introduce you to this guy. His name is Sid Bernstein. He's huge. He was the promoter of the Beatles. He promoted everybody. He was the biggest thing in promotion and rock and roll." And I said, "Yeah." I was like, "Definitely, I want to interview him," and that's why I met him.
Yeah.
And then the rest is Beatle history.
Well, he became a friend of yours. And what's your memories of Sid?
I went to his apartment, and he loved Alfonso's Bakery, so I'd buy him the Alfonso's. It's a famous place they sell pastries on Staten Island. He loved their cake and their pastries, so I used to buy him the cakes and the pastries, and I'd go to his apartment on 72nd Street. And he'd invite me up into the apartment. I was sitting and having breakfast with him and his kids and Sid, and he had the plaque on the wall, and it says, "Congratulations," and whatever, to Sid Bernstein, the Carnegie Hall. And then on the thing it said John McCarthy. I was like, John McCarthy? Why does it say John McCarthy? I guess that was his real name, It was John McCarthy. I was like, but you did think you'd read Paul McCartney, but it was
wow.
It was like, but I seen the thing, and then he had another thing with the Shea Stadium with the ticket, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
So he lived on 72nd Street. Was he closer to Dakota? Because that's where Lennon lived.
Yeah, well, he's on the east side, and Dakota's on the west side.
Yeah.
So, but it's right in the same area around there, but just across town. And but a lot of people. It's a small world, because a lot of people in the New York scene, it's a very small, close-knit kind of family, like out there a lot. It's like everybody knows everybody and that. And then I actually met Gary Van Syak, who played in The Elephant's Memory, who John Lennon, after he left the Beatles, he joined Gary's band, Gary Van Syak. It was called The Elephant's Memory. He actually played that concert they had when John Lennon came back from playing. He was playing live again. He played The Garden, and he was there playing for that show. We lost a great talent, man. He loved New York City, man.
He did love New York, yeah.
He loved it to death, ironically,
New York, it's a massive version of Liverpool, New York.
Yeah,
because you got the docks and all that, and there's a lot of similarities. I mean, nowhere's like New York, There's nowhere like New York City.
Yeah.
But
he used to come to Staten Island too. He came to Staten Island. He used to go to South Beach. He'd take the ferry over, and he would come over to South Beach and hang out down at the beach. Actually, there's a video out there of him and Yoko. And he would put on the sand, "I love you, Yoko." He really was in love with her. I mean, it's a travesty, not having him around anymore,
Can you imagine him having him around today? You'd be an 80.
The songs he would could have came out with, right, and everything. Yeah. But hey, we have a great.
We have a lot of memories, don't we?
Memories, yeah. But the thing is, when I met you in the park, Sid Bernstein used to come and sit on the bench. He'd sit on the side. Nobody really knew who he was, And somebody showed me actually about a month or two ago, a little clip that they were filming. Somebody else was filming, and then Sid Bernstein he was talking to me, and then I was like, I seen the guy who was filming, so I said, "You see this guy?" And I was like, blowing the spot up, you know what I mean, on Sid, saying, "This guy is the guy who brought the Beatles." You know what I mean? It's like, if it wasn't for him, like, it might have, the connection might have not have been there, because he kind of found out about the Beatles from the English paper, because he was in the, like I said, he was in the army,
Wow.
He was a writer, so he used to pick up the paper. That's how he found out about the Beatles. He told me the whole story.
Yeah.
But it's just, but it was great interviewing you there, like I met you. I was like, this guy's really cool, Actually, there was a guy there, he was like the mayor of the Strawberry Fields.
Yeah, I remember that guy.
Passed away.
Yeah.
He passed away, that guy, He had an illness. It's like so many people we lost, that was what, 2000, maybe 6 that was?
That was, I'll tell you when it was, because it was the 70th anniversary, so it's probably 2010.
2010?
Yeah, 2010, that was,
2010 is over 10 years now, right?
Yeah. Phil, when did you become involved in video production and broadcasting? How did you get into that?
I went to school. I went to school for television production in the late 80s. We were in a recession, in 1988, 89. So it was like you couldn't find no work, in production. I was like, wow, I went to school for this and you can't even find a job. Sounds familiar today, It's like you go to school, you spend all this money for school, and then you come out of school and nobody wants to give you a job. So what happened with me, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just find another job. I got to get to work, So I was doing engineering, building engineering in the city. But I still kept the passion for photography because I always liked shooting pictures and, doing videos and stuff. And I kind of got the bug after 9/11 hit, I lost so many friends on 9/11. Yeah. And then I have friends that are first responders, and I got involved with a lot of the people with the 9/11, the families, and I lost my friend Stephen Olson. He was a firefighter, and it was just so sad and tragic, and it just hit home so much out here. We lost so many people in Staten Island. There's blocks and blocks there's a block right behind me named after the girl, Sarah Patty. She had died on 9/11. I mean, they're all over the place, And,
well, I know you've been involved in a lot of 9/11 tributes. Yeah. You've done so much down at Ground Zero. I know you personally used some of the first responders.
I've been down in Washington about eight to 10 times, lobbying. It's called lobbying, when you lobby for a bill to get passed. And it was for the Zaroga bill. It's the James Zaroga was the first person who died on 9/11. He was a police officer, and his father, was still alive. His name is Joe Zaroga, and they named the bill after, the health bill, so they can get compensation and they can get medical attention, provided for, because so many guys got sick and got cancer and died from the toxins that they were breathing on the site, and the people that lived in the area were all breathing in all that, there's mercury and all the lighting. There was asbestos. There's all these other chemicals in there that when it came down, it left a cloud of dust. Because I even remember getting my brother. I had to go down to the ferry on Staten Island because he had to take the ferry over. He had to leave his car there. And my brother was covered in dust, all over, gray dust, all over his clothes, his hair. And I got him home to Jersey. But then I'm lucky I even got back because they wouldn't even let me over the bridge. I told them I got to get back, because I have a mother that's elderly, and I was worried about her, So, they let me back.
Well, the first time I ever visited America was 2002, January, and it was New York.
Yeah.
I went down there, and it was still, the dust was still there then. It was January.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing something for the 20th anniversary? Because it's coming to 20 years this September.
Yeah, actually I am, I'm going to be down there, like I'm always down there every, September 9th or 10th, and then mainly on the 11th, I'll go down there. But usually I'm at the museum, the 9/11 museum, on the 9th and the 10th, because they have a special ceremony for the people that, for the families, and they tie ribbons around there's a big, the last column. And they signed the column, the 343, that was the firemen, 343 firemen died. And, the families will tie a ribbon and they have a ceremony. I videotape that, we'll do another thing. We'll do a march. Last year we did a march we marched from in Greenwich Village all the way down to the World Trade Center site. And I videotaped that, and it's just something I need to do. I felt this is what I need to do. I felt how can I give back? How can I help out? It's like I wasn't a first responder on the day. I have a friend that lives down the block from me who actually was a first responder, and his name's Alan Grandy. He worked with the MTA. He was a plumber, so he responded, and he's got some issues with that too. And but he's still alive. But and I had another friend, Keith LeBeau. He's an iron worker. Another friend, Timmy. He's cement. He works with the cement. There's so many friends that I know that I've made too. Over that too. And I plan on going down there and covering it. It's a gray area to talk about, but now it's been 20 years.
It should never be forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it's a little bit easier. Before I was always like hesitant to talk to anybody about it because, you know what I mean? It's such a heartfelt thing, man. These people, they went through hell,
Absolutely.
I feel bad for a lot of people who passed away,
Phil, you created New York Rocks TV. You've interviewed some top guests over the years. I mean, Chubby Checker, Marky Ramone, Beatles original drummer Pete Best, Lawrence Stuber, guitar player with Paul McCartney and Wings, just to name a few. And I was fortunate enough to be on your show a number of times. You were kind enough to bring me on the show. My favorite part was when we did the music video shoot for Manhattan and Me around New York City.
We came up with some good ideas, right? I was like, oh man,
what a day!
When we were at Lincoln Center, I said, what can we do here to add to the video? So I was like, run up the stairs like you're doing the thing with
you made me do Rocky. You made me do the Rocky thing, yeah.
It was funny. And then when you went on the train, right, it just happened to be there was a lady reading of the book, Helter Skelter.
That's right.
That was not a setup. I was like, it was part of the video, and it just happened to be there was a lady sitting right across you when I'm videotaping you on the train reading the book Helter Skelter. I was like, that was weird.
Well, the funny thing about that, I thought, was because, as you know, in New York, nobody looks at each other on the subway. You get in the subway, and nobody really makes eye contact. So I'm sitting next to this lady, and you're going there, check it out, check the chick out next to you. She's reading Helter Skelter as you're videoing it. Nobody flinched. Nobody even looked at us.
Now you know how hard it is to find a date in New York City. Well, let me tell you, it's not easy. Everybody tries to everybody's afraid. It's like, everybody doesn't want to talk to anybody. It ain't like everybody thinks, oh, you live in a big city. Oh, sometimes it's just weird. Sometimes it could be.
Well, that was a long day. The video shoot, was we went everywhere, didn't we? We did Strawberry Fields. We went past the Dakota.
Yeah. We went to Grand Central Station.
Central Station. We went there. Yeah, that's right. Where else did we go?
We
were in the park. Yeah, and it was great, wasn't it? It was great.
You had your friend Andy. Remember?
God bless Andy Claiborne. Was kind enough, God rest him, yet to because his name's mentioned in the song. Jammin' Andrew C on Bleecker Street. So I called him.
Unbelievable. I couldn't believe, like, when I met him, I was like, wow, this guy's like really great. He played with a lot of famous people too.
Fantastic.
Amazing talent.
Great musician, yeah. I'll never forget he was kind enough that night because he was doing a gig in Queens that night. It was freezing cold November. And he made his way down to the Red Lion to be in that music video.
You don't know whether or not, it's funny, like trying to get people to do interviews. Sometimes, I don't know, it's weird with me. Like, I don't want to be rejected. So it's like, I don't want to like ask them and then they'll be like, no. And then they're like, it hurts so much, when they say no. Sometimes I'm like, oh, well, I'll feel them out, But I should have asked your friend. He would have probably did it, I was like, I thought maybe this guy's, maybe he doesn't want to be bothered.
We got some great memories of Andy, and we've spent time with him since that, Do you remember last time I was with him was that full weekend? We were all together. We were up in Ellington and Harlem.
We met uptown. He played in a little place, and he whipped out the guitar. He had that guitar. Oh, you had the guitar, that black one, the one with the
see-through guitar. Yeah, that was.
That's wicked. That guitar.
That was the last time I was with him. It's called Jameson's Bar. It was on 52nd Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I should have taken it. Oh man.
But you know what? I was blessed to sing at his memorial just over 2 years ago in New York. His wife Tanya invited me, and me and Phil from Waxy's, the owner from Waxy O'Connor's, he came with me. Yeah. Phil, we went there the day before we flew home. I said we've got to go to Jameson's after doing Andy's memorial, and we went and we had a whiskey for him in there. Yeah,
you reminisced.
Yeah, we did. You were kind enough also to let me stay at your house on Staten Island, and your beautiful Italian mother took care of me, man. Feeding me Italian sausage, all kinds of steak, you
She
name it.
remembers you. She remembers you.
Please give her my regards.
She's still around. My mother's 88 years old, you know.
Wow.
She's a tough Sicilian, you know.
Yeah.
She's
I'll never forget that food. She really took care of me.
I have a friend from Florida who's flying in tonight. Stan, he's a musician. He sings too. Yeah. He retired. He moved down to Florida, but he's coming up here for a wedding. And he says, "Oh, we got to go hang out a little bit. Go down to Jersey Shore. You know, that's what we should have went. We should have brought you down to Jersey Shore. You know."
Well, do you know, nice. I always say about New York, there's always an excuse to go back because there's always something you haven't done in New York, man.
How's that darling daughter of yours? Oh man, she's a doll. Man, yeah. I love her, man.
She's 10 already. She's going to be 11 this year. Yeah, she's doing really well. She's a sweetheart, beautiful manners.
Adorable, man.
Yeah.
And when she used to speak to you on the phone, I used to just love listening to her. She talked like a doll.
We also did a show at Gibson Guitar Studios, didn't we, on New York Rocks?
Yeah, that was awesome. And then you went in there, the guitar room with all the guitars. They had the showroom. Right. It was where the Hit Factory was. Actually, John Lennon.
It was next door, wasn't it?
Over there. Yeah. Across the street used to be Studio 54.
That's right.
So that place was a famous place. Like Michael Jackson recorded there, John Lennon recorded there. I told you it was called the Hit Factory. After years, it closed up, and then they made it into a Gibson guitar showroom for guitars. And then when bands were playing, let's say at the Garden or they're playing at the Beacon or wherever, they used to go and stop at the Gibson guitars. And they had so many rooms in there, you know, they had downstairs, upstairs, little rooms all over the place. The bands would rehearse, and it was perfect, you know, for them, plus for Gibson guitars, you know. So when I brought you there, and then I brought you in that big room with all the guitars, British guitar.
It's like a kid in a sweet shop, wasn't it?
The Union flag?
The Union Jack.
Union Jack, right?
Yeah. That was like the Oasis guitar, wasn't it? That Noel Gallagher plays. Yeah. There was the 335. That was the 335. I remember playing that one. Yeah. But I used an acoustic for the show. Because remember you saying to me before I flew out, I remember you saying on the phone, don't bring a guitar. I said, how am I going to do the show? No. If it's not a Gibson guitar, they will go crazy. You have to use one of their guitars.
But here's the great thing about it, Joe. You had a pick of any guitar you wanted. You're like, what guitar you want? We have any guitar you want, you know? And, you know, you just pick your guitar.
I picked the big jumbo Elvis one. That's the one I played on the show. Yeah. But you know, on New York Rocksville, do you have any favorite guests from all of these people that really stand out? You got any personal favorites you've interviewed?
I had a lot of personal favorites too. Well, Chubby Checker was great, you know, because he came all the way out his way. He came to Staten Island. I used to use a studio in Staten Island, and then they made it so difficult for you to use their studio. There's a lot of politics involved in public access TV. You believe it or not, I don't know why, but that's the way they are. So anyhow, that's why I started venturing out. I was like, I need a venue. I need a place where I can do the show, you know? So, so I did actually, he came to Staten Island, Chubby Checker. I had taped him playing at Feinstein's. It was a small club up on Park Avenue, uptown. Feinstein was the guy who he worked on Broadway. He was he was a producer and everything, and composer, and Feinstein's, you know, a famous guy, you know, and he owned a little place out there, so he played out there. So that's why I met him, Chubby Checker, and I told him, you know, can I do an interview with you? And he said, can you wait after the show? He was like so nice. I was like, wow. I was like, sure, man, I'm gonna be here. He says, you could tape the show too. He said, but just don't use the twist, because he didn't have the rights to it, because actually he didn't write the twist. He wrote Let's Twist Again.
All right.
So, you know, he kind of like conflicted. I said, no, that's fine. He says, yeah, you could use any other thing that you tape here. I said, wow, that's great. And actually I have a tape of that too, you know. I didn't put that up yet, but I have a lot of stuff in my archives. But anyhow, that's where I met him. And then I actually met the guy who, president of Gibson Guitars, one of the guys who was running like the New York chapter. So I met him there. And then I took pictures of everybody, because I was taking pictures too, you know, backstage after I interviewed him. And then he came to Staten Island. I said, would you come to Staten Island? He said, would you put my son on your show? And I said, yeah, I'll put your son on. So I put his son on, and then he came to Staten Island, Chubby Checker, and I put the son on, of course, and his band and, a couple of his friends. And it was good, I had very good shows, and then he was just great because he's just, he's a legend,
Yeah.
But him and Sid Bernstein, I just loved him so much. I put him on a couple of shows. He's been on like 2 or 3 shows. I interviewed him once, and then he came to Staten Island twice, and then I videotaped him in other places too. And he was just a kind soul. And too many celebrities, they don't really go out of their way for nobody. It's all about them. It's just like they don't do nothing to help other people really that much. Not everybody. Some people do. Some celebrities do, but a lot of them just do it, to make themselves look good. I do things. I've been doing things from the heart. I didn't get paid or I didn't get nothing extra out of it or anything. But I've been moving on now. I just haven't used the studio there in a while, So now I just built my own studio, and I figured let me start. And then the pandemic hit, of course, and that took its toll, mentally on a lot of people. Besides, a lot of people had sick and passed away. Actually, a guy who I interviewed was a great guy and a great interview. His name was Alan Merrill. He had passed away, and it's been over a year now. He passed away from the coronavirus, and he lived in Manhattan. If you don't know who Alan Merrill was, he was in a band called the Arrows, and that was quite years back. But then what happened was he also wrote songs. He wrote that song "I Love Rock and Roll,"
the Joan Jett song.
Hey, he wrote the John Jett song. It's funny how I met him too. I met him in the city, and then he's like, he looked really rock and roll. I said, this guy looks pretty cool. I'm gonna hang out. I'll hang out with him. He seems like he's a cool musician, whatever, and everything. And then we went to this club, and it was like a gentleman's club, and it was like this is like 30 years ago. So anyhow, getting back to Alan Merrill. We were in the club together, hanging out, and the girls are doing all the dancing and and everything. And I was like, dude, what do you do besides, you play guitar and, you were in a band a while ago or whatever. You're in the band now or whatever. He goes, oh, yeah, I did this, I did that. Also, that song, I Love Rock and Roll. I said, yeah, man, I know that song. Of course, everybody knows that song. Because that was my song. I wrote that song. I was like, really? I was like, holy. I said, I'm sitting somebody that's really famous, like famous for writing that song, Yeah. I was like really impressed back then, But that's how I met him. And then I kind of knew him a little bit from the New York scene because he lived in New York. And then years later, went by, and then I seen him in the city, and I was like, hey, man, I want to put you on my show. Can I interview you, put you on my show? And he came up to the city. I was doing something at the Funkadelic music studio. I set up, over there, It's on 41st Street musical studio.
Phil, I know you're a huge Kiss fan. Ace Frehley was also a guest.
I met Kiss a couple of times. Actually, I interviewed Gene and Paul at the Halloween parade in 2006. They were the grand marshals of the Village Halloween parade. And interviewed Gene and Paul, and actually interviewed Elvira there. And that was the first time I interviewed Gene and Paul. Then I've also interviewed Bruce Kulick twice. I interviewed Tommy Thayer, Eric Singer, the drummer they have now. So, I got to really interview all of them. But really, actually, Ace, I got to interview on AOL Sessions. It wasn't my show, but I got to ask Ace Frehley a question because I met a guy who played with Ace Frehley and grew up with him. His name is Pepe Castro. Pepe was in the first version of Hair. It was a musical, Hair.
Yeah.
And he was a rock and roll musician from New York. They're from the Bronx. So he grew up with Ace. He actually taught Ace how to play guitar. He said, you tell Ace when you do, because I interviewed him at Carmine Apiece came out with a book called Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll. And it was a big release party, and he played at the Cutting Room. And I went down there and I covered the event. And I interviewed, a whole bunch of people over there, besides Carmine Apiece. And the one that I interviewed was Pepe Castro. And he told me, but if you meet Ace, you better tell him. But you remember that he taught him how to play guitar. He taught him how to play the chords,
Yeah.
I got to interview Ace at the AO sessions. I says, I can't let the guy down, because he told me if you ever talk to Ace, tell him that. But he did, because, it's like a small world out here, everybody from New York City, a lot of people grew up,
Well, the last time they were in San Antonio,
Right.
where I work at Waxy O'Connor's on the Riverwalk, there's a restaurant next door called Ostra, and Gene Simmons was there the day after the gig, just sitting on his own next door. So one of our bar staff, Chuck Hartigan, he goes over to him and he thought he was going to ask him for an autograph, but he made a sign for himself, Chuck, saying, Gene Simmons took this picture, and he gave Gene Simmons the phone. He said, can you take my picture? And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it.
He could be really funny. He's got some really good one-liners, Gene Simmons.
But he wouldn't take the picture.
I met him a whole bunch of times. Every time I've met him, every time was a good experience. It was only one time he came to Staten Island, and he came late, and he was like really upset, I guess, and he wasn't in the greatest mood. Right. And that's the first time I ever seen him. But as far as that, he's always been great to the fans. He's always been like kind to everybody, So but now also I've been on, I've seen them so many times, in concert over 100 times. Wow. So they kind of know you. They see you for so many years,
Yeah. What about the Kiss Cruise? What's the Kiss Cruise that you did?
Well, the Kiss Cruise has been going on for many years now. Now they're up to the Kiss Cruise 10. And last year we couldn't go on the cruise because of the pandemic. So last year I went on the cruise for the first time. I was like, wow, I missed the other times because actually I couldn't go the other times. It's a long story. It's complicated. But anyhow, I couldn't go on the cruises, and I was like, oh, I'm missing all these cruises. So finally last year I was able to go, and I had the time of my life, and I was like, wow, this is great. They play like a sail away show on the deck without the makeup. And that's like, oh, that leads it off. And then there's other bands playing with Kiss, like Queensryche going to be there this year. Rat was supposed to be there, but I don't know if they're going to be on. I think Night Ranger replaced them. And there's other bands that are playing too. Also, Bruce Kulick has his own band too. He'll be playing. And you meet them on the board too. You bump into them, you see them in an indoor show with the makeup on. They do the sail away show. Then they do another indoor show, because they can't put everybody in the indoor show the first night. So they split it up into 2 nights. And it's wonderful, man. We really have a good time. It's 6-man cruises. And I had a great time. Last year, Warrant was there. I actually interviewed a guy from Warrant, one of the guitarists. But it was, I think it was on my website because I have a website, It wasn't a video interview. This was a long time ago. It was a, question, they asked questions, and I put pictures up, question Q&A like with him. And he was really cool, but I happened to meet him on the cruise, and it's just a great, wonderful experience. We went to Jamaica, and then we went to, Bermuda or something for a day. But the whole thing with the rock and roll, there's all these different concerts from all the bands. Like Almost Queen was there. There was a couple other bands, The Darkness, Almost Queen, Paolo Andrea. And I'm looking forward because now the pandemic is getting, it's getting to a point that it's getting so much better now that, they're allowing the cruises to happen again. So I'm going to be going again. Actually, I'm covering, it's called the Cruise Fest. It's a concert. It's like a convention before the Kiss Cruise. So I'm going down there early and I'm covering the event. Ace Frehley will play and Bruce Kulick, and there'll be a bunch of other bands. They're going to be jamming out, and they're all going to be playing before the cruise. Some of the bands will appear on the cruise and some of them won't. But it's just a great week of rock and roll.
Where does the cruise from? Where do you actually join the ship?
Well, you get the ship down in Miami. Okay, and you get the ship in Miami, you get on board, and then you come back like November 1st.
Right.
And I'm telling you, man, you want to get some rock and roll, man. What a week of rock and roll that is. Actually, I was down in Florida last year when the pandemic was still on. There was a Kiss masquerade. The same guys who put the Cruise Fest on, they did like a masquerade. And there was a couple of bands called the Talisman. They're a band that Gene Simmons' band. He had his own band. And then Ace Frehley took the band and used the band. Now it's Ace Frehley's band, and they play all Kiss music, and, it's just really great musicians, great guys. They played with Rick Derringer showed up because Rick Derringer actually was on a Kiss album. He played a song Exciter. It was for Creatures of the Night, and played the guitar lick on it. Everybody thought maybe Vinnie Vincent was the guitarist at the time, that it was his, him playing. And it was actually Rick Derringer, was playing guitar in that song. So he was down there. He played a little bit. He played Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo, and he's got a couple of hit songs. He played with Johnny Winter.
Well, Phil, you're currently producing a TV show called Sunday Dinner with Chef Clemenza. Tell us about this new show.
Okay, now I knew Chef Clemenza before he was a chef. Actually, I worked in his father's restaurant in Staten Island. He had a place called San Gennaro. It was an Italian restaurant, Article Road in Staten Island. I was the delivery guy. I was the pizza delivery. Then I started working inside the kitchen, making, food in the back. I'm like, what am I doing making food? I'm supposed to be the delivery guy, So his father was in a lot of mafia movies. He was in Once Upon a Time in America and, Goodfellas, a whole bunch of time because he grew up with Robert De Niro. So, so his son was Clemenza Jr. So I met him. He was about maybe about 17, 18 at the time. I was probably 22 or whatever, something like that. And then he was back there, and that's where I met Clemenza Jr. Years later, he became a chef. I was like, wow, I used to cook with this guy in a little restaurant, in his father's restaurant, and all of a sudden became a cook. And he was on Hell's Kitchen. He was on a couple other cooking shows, and he always wanted to do his own cooking show. I had spoken to him, and he was like, it was filmed, but it was just like filmed with a phone camera. And I said, well, let me see the footage. And I said, I do video. I could videotape. I do my own show, and I edit. I know how to use cameras and stuff. So I said, well, let me see the two. And I edited it, and, we put it together, and we put the show together. It's called Sunday Dinner with Chef Clemenza. And it's about food, family, and fun. And it's really funny because he's just like me. He's just
real Italian.
Yeah, really Italian.
Real Italian.
And actually, my mother came down, he sounds like Joe Pesci. I'm like, because everybody thinks like I sound like Joe Pesci. I said, yeah. I said, everybody thinks I sound like Joe Pesci. He sounds like Joe Pesci. And he's such a character. He's such a nice guy, too. He's really, but, now we have 9 shows done. I shot from 2 to 9 that I actually shot, and I did all the production on, the cameras, the audio.
What channel can you find the show on?
GBNA channel network. It's on Roku TV. So if you go on Roku TV, it's on every 6:30 at night on DB&A. You got to go to D, the B, and then the N sign and A. It's a network. It's on Roku, and you can see that on 6:30 every night. And then, of course, it's on Apple TV. It's on other platforms too. But we have it on Long Island TV now. But also, we're putting the episodes now on YouTube. So now we're starting to load the shows that showed on regular TV. Now we're putting them onto YouTube. So I've been producing that, co-producing, because really he's the producer because it's his idea, It's his creation. And we got a couple other guys working with us too. Now we have a lady that might come in and help out because it's big, when you're doing a couple of cameras at the time and, you got a guy directing or I'm directing or there's another man that we have here. His name is Butch. He's directing some of the shows because he's the one that actually is the executive producer, Butch Seltzer. So he's doing a little directing, I'm doing a little directing with him, but we'll get a couple of production people, on the back end, but mainly it's mainly me, because I set up the shots and everything. But it's a fantastic show. It's just funny. It's just the way he expresses himself with the cooking, because he's just a great chef, man. I'm telling you, the guy's so fast. I can't believe it. He just whips up things so fast. I'm like, it's a miracle. I'm like, wow. I wish I had somebody cooking like that. Well, my mom cooks.
Your mum's a tough act to follow in the cookery department there.
I bet you missed that food. You got to come by.
I got to come back again and stay again, yeah.
Back to New York.
Phil, what's the best platforms for people to follow you? New York Rocks TV and also this new TV show. What's the best way to follow you?
Well, to find me, you can find me on Facebook. I'm at NY Rocks TV on Facebook, or my name is Phil Fiumano, PhilFiumano, and you can friend me on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter also. I'm on Pinterest and YouTube, and you can subscribe to my videos on YouTube at NY Rocks TV. It's NYROCKS Rocks TV, and then with the cooking show Clemenza, you can find him online at Chef Clemenza, or Sunday Dinner with Chef Clemenza. If you put that in, the episodes will all come up on YouTube. Actually, you should talk to him, man. He's really quite a character.
Maybe we should bring him on the show, yeah. We should bring him on the show one week.
I told you you're going to bring him on. I said, you should bring him on. He's an interesting character. He's really fun person to talk to,
Yeah, it's probably a good idea to bring you on separately, because you two Italians and a Scouser together, that'll be absolute bedlam. But
forget about it, Joe. I want to thank you so much for having me on.
Been a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us, and give my love to your beautiful mom.
It's so hard to find people that are genuine, that return favors. It's like in this business, I've reached out and helped so many people. They do nothing for you. You know what I mean? They don't even thank you. They barely thank you. And it's like, you never see them or talk to them again.
You helped me big time, I've been on your show about 4 times, I think, if my memory serves me right.
And I always brought you back, and I was like, wow, and it's like, you feel like you return the gratitude, like you're grateful. And then it's
I am.
Where I'm coming from.
Really appreciate you.
You give back, you're a wonderful guy, a wonderful family, a daughter, a wife, I was like, oh man, this guy's great. It was a pleasure meeting you. I was like, you're such a great guy.
But Phil, regarding New York Rocks, who rocks better than New York Rocks?
Nobody.
Phil Fiumano, everybody.